'Tis the season for stuffing, and we are taking it to the next level. We've got some classic flavors and some creative twists. I'm going to show you how to make stuffing that is going to steal the show, and you're going to wow your guests. Get ready. I'm gonna make a truly homemade sourdough. This one is sourdough. It doesn't have to be sourdough that you use though, okay? Just buy yourself a French loaf, or you can buy a sourdough loaf at the store if that's your preference. It's totally up to you. I made one and it turned out kind of flat, which it just sometimes happens depending on the weather. It's super wet outside, so sourdough can be finicky at times. So we're gonna use this one because it's perfect for a recipe like this. And I'm preheating my oven to 425 degrees. I'm gonna go ahead and cut all this up though. So I'm using the majority of this, maybe if not all of it. We're gonna cut it into little squares and then get it cooking in the oven to make it more like that crouton type of texture that you get when you start out making stuffing. And I'm not worried about this being cut perfectly or anything like that. Let me start with this and see what it looks like. I'm gonna cut this into about 1/2 inch pieces. You can also just tear it too, if that's your preference, if that makes it easier. Okay, we're gonna put it into this bowl first because we're gonna make nice seasoned croutons, or crouton-like breadcrumbs that are gonna go in this stuffing. All right, so I've got 12 ounces of the bread. And you can use 24 ounces if you're making a full recipe. I'm cutting this in half because it's not Thanksgiving yet. And I'm gonna be making this more than once. So I need to add some butter. Actually, I need to melt some butter. I need about 1.5 tablespoons of melted butter. And while that butter is melting, let's cut up some fresh herbs. You do not have to use fresh herbs, but I have them, so it makes sense for me to just go ahead and use those. Let's take it all off of the stems here. So I'm using some thyme. I've got some oregano, and I've got some sage. I really wish I had a little bit more thyme. I just started growing more thyme, so it's not quite ready yet. Pull these sage leaves off and just finely chop those. Like I said, if you don't have fresh herbs, don't feel like that's something that you have to buy a bunch of. If you have Italian seasoning or something like that in your pantry and it's dried, go for it. Now, sometimes I just want the easy method, and we're gonna go to the store, we're gonna get a box or a bag of the stuffing mix, and we're gonna mix it, and we're gonna make an amazing stuffing. Sometimes I want to make it completely from scratch. It's not super difficult to do. There is one additional step at the beginning that kind of helps it get to that stuffing mix consistency. That's what we're going to make right now. It is so good, herby, fresh, delicious. All right, so we're adding in all of the fresh herbs that we cut and tossing that straight into the bowl. I'm gonna come in with some garlic powder, and you can mince garlic if you want to. That's completely fine. Let's use, I don't know, 1/2 teaspoon-ish or so. And then this melted butter, we're gonna just drizzle all over, and we're gonna toss. Now, my new oven, I was just thinking this. I thought, you know, I've got some time. I'm not used to an oven that actually preheats in a decent amount of time. This one is just amazing. It preheats so fast. I'm so thankful to have an oven that actually works properly. If you weren't here for the oven saga, we've been dealing with that mess for a little while. All right, so we're just mixing all this together, just making sure that the bread cubes get butter and that mixture all over. And because I like the garlic flavor, we're gonna go a little more. Okay. Toss again. And I'm gonna put this onto a parchment lined baking sheet. So let me grab that. Let's taste one. That's gonna be good. All right, well, let's just pour this out onto the baking sheet and spread it around. So like I said, my oven is currently preheated already to 425 degrees. You do wanna try and separate this out of it, trying to get a flat layer as much as possible. Oh, a lot of my herbs fell off. Let's move them over. It's okay because they're all gonna go into the stuffing once we mix it together. Okay, I think that's good. All right, so we really just want this to get nice and dried out. It's gonna take probably 10 to 12 minutes. I'll set a timer for 10. While that's in there, we'll get stuff ready for the rest of the stuffing mix. I have a 1/2 pound. This is sage pork sausage I got at Whole Foods, and I just got a 1/2 pound of it because that's all we needed for this recipe. I'm gonna take this over and just brown it up on the stovetop in a pan, and then we can work on everything else over here, all the cutting and everything, while this is cooking. Now everyone knows, traditionally, stuffing has onions and celery in it, and that is totally fine. We've had it that way multiple times. However, if you've been here for a while, you know I love making recipes my own. I like to change things up and make them the way that we love them, and this is one way that we're doing it in this recipe. I'm actually gonna be using leek instead of celery and onion. Now, I actually love the crunch that celery adds, but I just wanna try something a little bit different here. So feel free to use celery and onion instead of leek. All right, I'm gonna use the same bowl that we had the breadcrumbs in because nothing raw was in there. So we can utilize that. Why can I never cut this straight? Okay, I'm cutting down the middle. Hello. No, I'm not. I'm not cutting down the middle. There we go. And again. And I mean, this is herbs that you're seeing all over the leek here, but you do need to give it a quick rinse because dirt can get all up inside of there as it's growing. Okay, I'm also gonna add in 2 cloves of garlic into this. This is all gonna go over and cook with the sausage, but just putting it into this bowl for easy transfer. If you're using onion and celery, you want to put those in with the sausage a little earlier than the garlic. The leek takes no time to cook at all, so I don't have to worry about the garlic burning. But the onion and the celery would take a little bit more time, so you want to put that in closer to the beginning of the sausage cooking. Okay, that was the timer for the breadcrumbs. I think they still need a little bit more time. That was 10 minutes, so I'm gonna give them 2 more. Okay, back over here to the sausage. I'm cooking this low and slow just because I had to get the leek and the garlic ready to go. But you can crank up your heat once you're ready to. I am trying to break it up as much as possible. I personally I love sausage, but I don't want big bites of sausage in my stuffing. All right, let me add in my vegetables and continue to cook. Overall, my breadcrumbs are taking a little longer. It's more like 15 to 17 minutes, which is fine. I'm just getting other things kind of prepped. I've got some rosemary here that I'm just gonna take off of, you know, sort of the stem. There's not even really a stem on this. And I'm gonna chop this up really fine because this is gonna go into the stuffing. Also some sage. So just a few sage leaves, also chop those up. All right, my sausage is done. So let's get that, at least turn the heat off and move that over. These are perfect. So I'm taking those out and I'm gonna turn my oven down to 350. All right, so let's get all the herbs and go ahead and just toss them here into this bowl. And then the sourdough, the breadcrumbs are gonna go in there too. Nice. Add in the sausage mixture. And I'm just gonna lightly toss just a little bit. We're gonna be adding more stuff still. All right, so let's just add a touch of salt. There's obviously sausage has salt in it, so we don't need to add too much, but just to make sure that we have a really good flavor. I also picked up these mushrooms from Whole Foods, and these are, it was like a mixed set. So it's a bunch of just different kinds of wild mushrooms. So I'm just gonna give a really light chop. And we're gonna have fun with different kinds of mushrooms in this recipe. All different kinds. cremini is a great option for this recipe though. Probably gonna use about half the container here. Let's just do a light chop. Okay, mix that in. Now, what you wanna do instead of what I did is have all this stuff already prepped, chopped, and cut ahead of time, and then it's just mixing it together. All right, we've got 1 egg here. Let me whisk that. It really would be so much simpler to just have all of the ingredients already out and ready to go. Which, you know, sometimes I do here, sometimes I don't. Pour the egg all over. Throw some over the side, because that's what we do here. This smells really, really, really good. Okay, I have 1 cup of bone broth. This is chicken bone broth. You can use chicken stock or chicken broth. It's up to you. This is just what we always have on hand. So I'm gonna pour that 1 cup over. Let's see where we are. That's almost the full cup. Now, if it still seems too dry after you pour that cup in, and like I said before, we're making a half recipe, but if it still seems too dry, don't be afraid to pour in extra broth to really add liquid to your bread cubes again. Okay, I think the 1 cup is gonna be totally fine for us and what we're doing here. Last thing I'm gonna add is some cheddar cheese. This is a Kerrygold cheddar. It's the one that we always use. And I'm not really measuring, but maybe a half cup or so. You can go a little more, closer to a cup if you really want that flavor. Now, toss this one last time. I'm kind of wondering if I need an extra egg. I don't know, we're gonna go for it, and then I'll tell you at the end if I felt like we needed an extra egg. I love how like herby and flavorful this is. Like, to me, I love a good fresh stuffing like this. If I'm gonna eat stuffing, like, yes. Now, because I'm making a half recipe, I'm using an 8x8 baking dish. You might need to use a 9x13, but the whole thing is gonna go in here, and I did spray it, so it's already nice and prepared. Make sure we get all of that out. Okay, spread this out in your dish, and then this is gonna bake uncovered at 350 degrees. It could take really, depending on your oven, it could really take anywhere from 40 minutes to like 55 minutes. I'm gonna set my timer for 45 because I think that's probably where we're gonna be, but let's give it a go. All right, y'all, stuffing from scratch, all the good stuff in it. We've got sausage, the sourdough bread, we've got leeks.
What was that mushroom mixture?
Yeah, it was a mushroom blend, like a wild mushroom blend. So that's what I used in this. Good. Yeah.
It's leeks and the sourdough you made.
Yep, sourdough. The recipe is fantastic, but it does not need any extra salt. So I added probably an extra like half teaspoon of salt, but the sausage alone has enough, enough saltiness to it, plus the butter that you use over the sourdough bread that adds, unless you're using unsalted butter, of course, that adds an element of salt. So you really don't need any more salt than the sausage automatically comes with.
Yeah, I'm not a stuffing fan.
Yeah.
But I could eat this all day.
Yeah, it's great flavor. It's very herby.
So good, yes.
I love the addition of the leeks in there versus celery and onion. So just a little bit of something different. Y'all know he doesn't eat onion, so it's just kind of changing it up for our family and making it something a little bit different. But the flavors in here, it tastes earthy and
the sourdough's the start.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like earthy, but also, I don't know the right word here.
It's delicious.
It is really, really good. So yeah, highly, highly suggest. Even if you don't make your own sourdough, like if that's not something that you do, you can buy sourdough at almost any grocery store now. And this was very easy to make up once you have that bread. So highly suggest this one for Thanksgiving.
You think you need that wild mushroom mix?
No, I think you can do it with any like
any
any cremini. Is that cremini, I believe. Baby Bella, anything like that. I just wanted to use that because I saw it in Whole Foods and I was like, oh, this is a neat mushroom blend. But yeah, delicious, you guys, delicious. We are gonna start with your traditional cornbread stuffing. I used a Jiffy cornbread mix. So my cornbread is made and it is also cooled. Now I'm gonna preheat my oven to 300 degrees. I'm gonna break up this cornbread into bite-sized pieces and put it on a baking sheet. This is gonna go into the oven at 300 degrees for about 20 minutes, and this is just gonna toast it up. Now, once that cornbread is all done, you want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees because that's what we're actually gonna be making the cornbread stuffing recipe on. For this recipe, I'm gonna be chopping up celery. The full recipe calls for 3 celery stalks. I'm probably gonna go for right around a cup of diced celery. I'm also gonna chop up a tablespoon of fresh sage. We're gonna take the leaves off of some thyme stalks. We need about 1 tablespoon of that. I'm also taking 1/4 cup of pecans and we're gonna chop those up. You guys know I normally use the baggie method where I put it into a baggie and then kind of beat it with my meat mallet to chop it up, but we are completely out of baggies right now, so we're skipping that. I've got 2 tablespoons of butter. We're gonna heat that over medium heat, and then I'm gonna add in my celery. I'm gonna season that with salt and pepper. You guys know recipes like this always call for onion, but we are skipping that part. I am going to add in onion powder though. We do want the flavor. My husband just doesn't like onion, so we're gonna skip that portion, but you would wanna add in onion as well. I am just cooking the celery until it's soft. It's gonna take about 5 minutes or so. Once that celery is soft, I'm gonna add in the garlic. We're gonna need about 1 clove of garlic. Add in that sage and the thyme, and I'm gonna let this cook for about 1 minute. Now that my celery is nice and cooked and you've got that sage and garlic and thyme, it's so fragrant. I'm gonna pour in the stock that we have. This is about 3/4 cup. We're just gonna let that cook just for about 30 seconds and then remove that from the heat. I've put my cornbread pieces that were toasted in the oven in a baking dish, and I've added the pecans, that 1/4 cup of chopped pecans, and kind of stirred that up a little bit. We are gonna bring over that vegetable stock mixture that we made over on the stove and combine all of this together. This is going in our 375 degree oven. This is gonna bake for about 30 to 40 minutes. I find you really have to be careful with this one because in my opinion, the cornbread stuffing can get overdone pretty quickly. So I am definitely gonna check this one at around the 25-minute mark. All right, here is the cornbread stuffing. This is a very classic, traditional kind of stuffing. Okay, we are trying the cornbread mixture. Just traditional.
What is this one?
Cornbread. Well, you don't care for cornbread.
It's like a crumbled cornbread.
Tastes like a crumbled cornbread. So off camera, he said, it doesn't taste dry, it tastes like a traditional cornbread. We are going to make a recipe that actually says world's best stuffing. We'll see how this goes. Unfortunately, there is a part of this recipe, it calls for bread dumplings. I have looked everywhere. Apparently it's in the freezer section of your grocery store. I actually looked online. It says that Walmart sells it. If you can find these bread dumplings, obviously you want to try this recipe with that. We're gonna have to substitute with some crunchy, kind of crunchy day-old French bread. If you can find them, you will need a box of the bread dumplings, unless of course you're making the full recipe for this, and then you would need 2 boxes of those. So for this recipe, we're gonna need about 8 ounces of pork breakfast sausage. I am gonna cook this up over on my stovetop. I'm only gonna be using half of it for this recipe. I'll pull half of it out after it's cooked, and I will use that for a different recipe in the morning for breakfast. We are going to need about a cup of diced celery, and then if you are using onion, you would have about a cup of diced onion as well. And this recipe also calls for mushrooms, so I'm cutting up about a cup of mushrooms. I've pulled out half of the sausage and we are gonna saute the vegetables. So I'm adding about a half stick of butter and adding in my cup of celery, my cup of mushroom, and this is where you would add in the onions. For us, we're just gonna add in onion powder and other seasonings just because you guys know we don't use onion here. I am gonna saute these vegetables. I do want them to have a little bit of crunch though. I have my bread that we went ahead and cut up and I'm adding it to a casserole dish here and I'm going to dump the meat and vegetable mixture into it. We're gonna toss all of this and combine it really well. You are gonna need about 16 ounces for the half recipe of chicken stock, chicken broth, vegetable stock, or something like that. I'm using a bone broth that I made here at the house. If you guys are curious, I've had a couple of you ask about this. I do have a recipe coming out. It's either next week or the week after. It's going to be in a video and it will show you how I make my bone broth. I never buy a rotisserie chicken without following it up with some bone broth. Over here in my measuring cup, I am gonna whisk up 1 egg and I'm gonna add my milk to this and continue to whisk. So I'm adding about a half cup of milk. We are pouring in that mixture into our casserole dish here, and I wanna make sure that we combine everything really well. Now, before putting this in the oven, I am gonna melt about 3 tablespoons of butter or so, and we're going to kind of spoon this over the top of the stuffing. My oven is currently preheated to 375 degrees, and this is gonna cook for about 45 minutes. We want it to get nice and brown color on the top. All right, friends, here is our world's best stuffing. Let's give this one a try. Okay, this is the one that's supposed to be the bread dumplings. It's rather soggy, but we'll see how it tastes. Because if the flavor is right, I would try and search for these bread dumplings. Yeah? I wonder if this would work with like biscuits. The flavor is on point. Okay, I am coming to you guys several hours later with an update on this stuffing. I actually put it back in the oven and let it cook significantly longer. I think it was like another 30 minutes or so. And the reason I did that is I was hoping that some of the liquid would evaporate. It absolutely did, and it's very good. The one thing that I will say is that if you are going to make this, I used about 2.5 cups, maybe 3 cups of the French bread that was cubed. I would use 5 cups for a half recipe. And I think that it would actually be really, really good. Probably perfect. It wouldn't have too much liquid in it. It wouldn't be too mushy or anything. But the flavor is really good on this one. Admittedly, I am most excited about this recipe. This is a beer, cheese, bacon stuffing. And I love all of the ingredients. It sounds delicious. For this recipe, we are going to need 1 stalk of celery. This is chopped. It's gonna roughly be about 1/4 cup. You would need 1/4 cup of onion as well if you are adding that. We're gonna need 1/4 cup of beer, just use whichever kind you want. 5 cups of French bread. This is dried out overnight and cubed. About 5 slices of bacon. I've already pre-cooked our bacon because that just makes things really easy. We need about 1/2 cup of shredded mild cheese. About 1/2 tablespoon of thyme and about 1 teaspoon of sage. We need 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of Worcestershire, 1 cup of low sodium broth. We're using bone broth. For this recipe, I am melting my butter over medium heat. I'm using about 5 to 6 tablespoons of butter here. And we're gonna add in that celery. Here's where you would also add in the onions. We are going to season this with salt and pepper to taste, cooking this for about 6 to 8 minutes until the vegetables are tender. All right, now that those vegetables are looking perfect, we are gonna add the beer to the skillet. 1/4 cup of beer here, bring that to a simmer, cook it for about 2 to 4 minutes, and the liquid is gonna reduce by half. Once that happens, we do wanna remove our skillet from the heat. We're taking 5 cups, roughly 5 cups of that French bread. I am putting that into a bowl and we are gonna add half of our bacon. So we're gonna add about 2.5 slices or so, maybe 3 slices of bacon because we love bacon in this house, so we're not gonna skimp on the bacon. I'm also putting in about 1/4 cup of the cheddar cheese and then toss in the thyme and sage and just toss all of that together. Our beer buttery vegetables are ready to go. We're gonna toss these in with the bread mixture and just make sure everything is nice and combined. I do have a baking dish here. I'm using a round one just because that is what we have left, but it's roughly an 8-inch dish. We are going to spray that and then smooth out our mixture into this dish. And then I'm gonna add the remaining bacon and cheese to the top of this. We do wanna cover it with aluminum foil. We're gonna cook it for 40 minutes and then remove the foil and cook for another 20 to 30 minutes. Now, because I'm making a half recipe, I might cut these times down a little bit. We're just gonna have to watch it in the oven. All right, friends, here is the beer cheese, bacon, stuffing casserole. We're gonna try this one and let you know what we think. For like a different kind of stuffing? Not traditional.
That's the best one. The cheese comes in at the end of the bite.
Yeah, this has really good flavor. Honestly, I think I like the flavor of the world's best one with the sausage, but the texture is way better with this, and that mild cheese comes through in this. So good. All right, friends, so the beer, bacon, cheese stuffing was the clear winner here. We really enjoyed trying different stuffing recipes. I hope that you enjoyed this as well. I hope you're having a great week. Bye. Wait, was I not recording? Our verse today comes from Psalm 119, 133. Keep steady my steps according to your promise, and let no iniquity get dominion over me. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, I would love if you would subscribe and stick around, but make sure that you check out the video that I have listed above. If you need more inspiration, you're gonna get tons of it there. This is such a good one with amazing recipes. Have a great week.